This is a 2-year. It should be fruit, salted caramel, cinnamon, and maple.
Oh man, it says American whiskey was born in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, this is going to taste like caramel and depression. Is what this is going to taste like. Oh man,
caramel depression.
All right. Well, on that note, let's get this on. Here we go.
Welcome to the Buckhorn Podcast. I'm Martelle, and with me always is Randy. What up, Randy?
Yo, what up?
What's going on? So, on this episode...
You said what's going on, did not let me reply.
I know.
Nothing, go ahead.
Good. All right. So, common sense would have said, I would have let you reply when I said what's going on.
But you don't have any, so
obviously,
what are we doing?
I don't have any. On this show, we're doing a little something different. We went over to Hilliard and recorded with Kamiwaza Podcast.
Yes.
Aaron and Drew were gracious enough to have us over, and we did a little show. Little special guest, Dr. Ohm dropped in with some whiskey.
And some wisdom.
Wisdom and a microphone. So that qualifies him to be a guest on the show.
He brought his own microphone.
He did. It was amazing. So with that, here's the show.
Here we go. Hope you enjoy it.
Enjoy.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Kamiwaza Podcast. I am Aaron Giannetti. I'm here with the wonderful and amazing Drew Dillon.
What's up, guys?
And we actually have two special guests in the house, although I guess this is going to be weird when you guys post this to yours. But we have the one and only Randy Nelson, Randy Two Mugs.
That's
Nelson.
right.
Where does that come from? And like a quick one. Don't make it like
quick
a
one.
story.
When I was out in the desert on a survival show called Fat Guys in the Woods, my wife's going to kill me because she never wanted me to say this to anybody. I made a joke about the fourth day of us hiking 30 miles through the desert that it'd be nice just to be able to clean the armpits and the fellas. And I said, what if I took my mug there and let it get on that, near that fire, just warm up a little, and I can just dunk them in real quick. And then the next day, as we were chasing down tarantulas and centipedes to eat them, my buddy Creek Stewart, who's a survival instructor, said, man, I bet you would need 2 mugs with the amount of balls it took to do whatever it was I did. And
there you
they started calling me 2 mugs. The crew started calling me that. And I changed it on my Facebook, and I took it away like a year ago. And I had people I don't even know messaging me like, you need to change it back. That's who you are. And they don't know the story behind it until now. But
well, fair enough.
Hi, Beth.
Oh, man. And then we also have Mr. Brandon Martelle in the house.
What's going on, guys?
Brandon and Randy actually run another podcast that you might be listening to this on their stream right now, called the Buckhorn Podcast. And we were just talking about downstairs that when you guys started, you really didn't have an intention, right?
Right.
No, we still don't.
We still don't.
It is
but I think we just discovered it. You are pretty much a reviewing bourbon podcast that also talks about whatever current events and randomness comes up.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Seinfeld of podcasting.
Yeah, we tried to keep it. We wanted to make a show about nothing because that way we never pigeonholed and we can just.
Yeah.
It's just the two of us giving our opinions that nobody wants to hear. And the best feedback we've gotten so far is I quit listening because I get tired of hearing you two talk about things you're uneducated on. And I didn't tell Martelle that till now. But I said, you know what? That's fair.
That's fair.
It's literally just us getting whether we know what we're talking about or not. Here's our opinion.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I'm absolutely fine with that.
but yeah, we have ended up reviewing a lot of bourbons and beers, and then we talk about news stories or anything really. Just something funny happens to us or somebody pisses us off.
Yeah, we do a couple games, the Urban Dictionary game or a What Chaps Our Cheeks session.
Yeah.
Section.
What chaps our cheeks.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Oh, gosh, I love it. Well, this was actually, so today we're going to talk about common sense, and this was actually...
exciting.
Yeah, right.
I can't.
Well, Drew's going to kick this one off here in a minute.
Like, I
the end
just
of this.
walked into this room, and that shit was violated in a big way.
But
Sorry.
this was actually Brandon's topic idea, and Brandon actually brought, I should say, our bourbon selection for the day, which is Wiggle. Is it pronounced Wiggle or Weigel?
I don't know. I was thinking why. It's got one G.
Yeah, so it's Wigle. Made from scratch with regional grain, Pennsylvania bourbon, right? So
It's not bad. It's a 2-year.
yeah, it's
not terrible.
It's supposed to have fruit, salted caramel, cinnamon, and maple. I was going to say apples.
And iron
maple.
ore.
Iron ore.
And a little bit of steel.
A little bit of the Depression in there.
Carmen
right?
and Depression.
Some
The
minor
Depression
cough.
and a little bit of the Mafia. Just a titch. What was it? Bourbon brings back the Pennsylvania tradition of distilling with organic regional grains, milled on site, then fermented and distilled in our copper pot still. There you go.
So we usually give our reviews out of 1 to 5 donuts is how we rank it. And you can do half increments if you want. But I will say on first sip of this, it definitely tastes like it's from Pennsylvania. I'll just leave it at that.
Are you comparing it to Iron City beer?
Oh, gosh.
That doesn't sound appealing at all, but sure.
That's right out of Pittsburgh.
I see light, man.
I see light.
That's a craft light beer right there.
You know what?
All right. Let's get on topic. Drew.
Yep.
Why don't you kick us off with some common sense stories?
All right, let's talk about common sense. I'm gonna say it right now. We walk up here. We use the same room to podcast every week, and I'm like, cool.
Which is upstairs. Why do you guys, all you skinny fit mofos, always have everything upstairs, and I got to waddle my big butt up here?
Oh, it's great. Well, I'm not going to lie. I'm typically the last person to walk in this room. There's been a couple times where I've been standing up here waiting for him. So I'm used to shutting that door, right? For everybody, like imagine just a room with a door. And I go to shut the door, and that shit just bounces open. It kind of surprises me. And I'm like, oh, why is this shit just bouncing open, right? Like, and now I'm looking around like I'm going like totally just shut something into the door, you know? And I'm like looking around like, where's the thing said in said door, you know? And I finally look at Aaron and I go, hey, why the hell is your door not closing? And he goes, oh, yeah, that might not work again. Dude and AJ had to take it off to like move something through it. And at that point I looked at the hinges and this is where it comes into common sense. They're not even close.
No.
Like
They're way off.
Like there's a spot where
There's
the hinges
invisible
used
gap.
to be
Right.
and where they are now.
Sounds about right.
I mean, the door's on the frame, technically.
Yeah, I mean, it shuts.
It's kind of like your car needs
Does it?
alignment.
doesn't stay
Right.
shut.
You can drive your car, but you should get in alignment, and then you never do. Is that just that's a West Side of Columbus thing? Okay. Maybe it's just
Possibly.
me. Maybe that's a Hills of Southern Ohio thing. I've needed alignment on my truck for a year and a half.
Wow, valid. And if you're driving in the hills of southern Columbus, you're driving a little bit rougher roads. All right, so let's talk common sense.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, and we'll use the lack thereof example, kind of going through it, right? So a couple of things. Now, originally when the topic initially came up, it was kind of along the lines of, like, what is common sense and why don't people have it anymore? And I think a couple of interesting spins that we're going to throw into it is how has, as awkward as it sounds, how has common sense changed over the last decade, 2 decades, 3 decades? I mean, heck, 5. But I think we can all talk to at least 3 decades of ishness as that goes. So first and foremost, let's kind of round robin it and go, okay, what is common sense? Even if it's not, not saying not educated, but not an educated definition. Like somebody comes to you and says common sense. How do you define common sense? 2 mugs.
I would say that it's like this. You know, human nature is you're at a party and you see a girl that kind of looks attractive and you kind of go, not bad. Common sense is going, wait a second, I'm at a family reunion, so I'm probably related to her. She's dating me related to. You know, it's kind of like when you go to put a door back on the hinges and they don't line up.
Yeah.
And you go, hold on a second, something ain't right. It's
Something
like
ain't
gut
right.
instinct. Common sense is something we all should have. I think everybody has it. I just think it's easier today for people to go, nah, I don't need that.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree with that.
I think it's more of a
Lazy
choice to not use. I think common sense is ingrained in everybody. So it's one of those things. Put a door on the hinges and don't line up. Common sense because I should redo it, but
Now I bear this question. So along those lines with those examples, right, that takes, like a test, retest, or figuring, right? So the door obviously worked. Door came off, put the door back on, it doesn't work anymore. So we tested and retested.
Right.
Door doesn't work, right? Now, is that a lack of common sense, or is that specific example and a lack of initiative to fix the thing that you know is wrong? Because I know for a fact when the door doesn't shut, and they're going like, now is that just laziness?
That's what
Right? As opposed to common sense. Because if I legitimately, in my mind, if I legitimately lack common sense, then I'm not aware there's a problem. Does that make sense?
well, you need to talk to your boys and figure out if they lack common sense or lack initiative. Either way, you got a problem on your hands.
That's true.
Yeah, I'll put 50
that's what
on
you're saying.
initiative.
Well, was there even a test and retest scenario here? Was it just put the door up and left it open and
I
walked
believe
off?
at one point I overheard dude go hear like a clank clank and go, Going to need to tighten that up. And so, yeah. So I'm going to go with there was a test retest, and then the initiative would come kind of on the opposite side, right? So to kind of keep in this example, right? So is putting a door on a hinge common sense? Like
just putting a door on a hinge?
Yeah, the idea of like, hey, here's a door, there's some hinges, put the door on a hinge. As far as like, if we're going to talk about what the literal definition of common sense would be, which I'm going to go out and say is a subset of rules, ideas, concepts that most people should inherently know.
Google it real quick.
All right.
I almost did
that sometimes.
I usually Google everything.
Did you?
I did.
Hang on. We got to Google.
So the sound practical judgment concerning everyday. I can't read my own writing.
He actually wrote notes.
I wrote it down.
He starts squinting.
I did. Matters. There we go. I have.
You're gonna have to read that sentence because I'm lost.
Sound practical judgment concerning everyday matters is what
I think
is what the definition comes down to.
Okay, so I think one of the keys that goes into that, and I think it's going to take us down the line of some of these other questions, is the everyday matters thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because so legitimately, right? First time you ever put a door on the hinges, does that fall into a common sense category?
That wouldn't be an everyday occurrence for the vast majority of people now.
So I think it's interesting to look, and we've talked about this several times throughout the episodes, but like definitions matter, understanding matters, right? So if we look at common sense and we look at those things where I think that's going to be the key thing, right? The everyday matters, things that are routinely coming up. So let's make a rough call and say that anybody above the age of 18 should have whatever this subset of common sense categories is, right?
Well, I think it starts earlier than that.
Well, I would like to say it should.
Yeah, my 5-year-old knows, hey, don't put your hand in that outlet. And I'll say, should you do that? And my 5-year-old goes, no, why? It might hurt me. Just because I've told him that, and he goes, okay, that's painful. Yeah. I don't do it. That's common sense.
Right.
He doesn't test it.
He's got a chunk of it. I'm saying by the time you're 18, for the most part, you should have it on lockdown.
Yeah,
right.
Should.
I'm not saying it is.
But some of us are 35 and still struggling. So
Ooh, yeah.
He's up.
Well, how old's dude?
Dude, I know I attended his 40th birthday party at some point.
Okay,
I think it's like 5 years ago.
Yeah, that might have been 4 or 5 years ago. So that's a good thing, right? Because that means that I just froze him at 40. So
I guess so.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's at least that.
It's also a bad thing because you'd think a 40-year-old man would go, the door doesn't work. I should see what's wrong.
Well, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for a minute and say that something came up where he ran out of time. But anyway, so if we're looking at it from that perspective, right, so it's something you should be able to understand from everyday matters, right? I think that changes the way that anybody needs to view common sense based off not only what we would think kind of universally everybody should understand, but I also think that falls into regionally what you should understand. Like, I legitimately, common sense up here in Ohio is I'm saying this very, very, very loosely. But common sense here in Ohio, you should be able to learn how to drive in snow, right?
Should.
Common sense down in North Carolina, not the same.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
But again, everyday matter. Like, winter comes here, like 6 months-ish out of the year. There's a chance you're going to get, freezing rain, ice, snow, all that kind of shit. Like, if you're going to live here and you choose to live here, you need to kind of build that mess out. But regionally, not the same. And I also think from a common sense then falls into industry. Right? Like, for me in the self-defense industry, I think that if you've been an instructor in the self-defense industry for X amount of years, there's this list of common sense things you should understand. And if you don't, I get to shame you. So keeping that in mind, agreeants, unagreeants on common sense in respect there. Well, I don't know about the snow thing.
I zoned out on all the rest.
I
just heard snow. And
we're just starting to get warm weather.
Is common sense more regional than it is universal? I think
I would say I would say it differs. I wouldn't say it's just regional.
Yeah, I would say definitely.
But I would say it differs.
Yeah.
Well, even here in Ohio, you get snow, you get rain, and people lose their minds. They don't understand how to drive in the rain.
And it's different if you grew up in the Hocking Hills dealing with snow and rain than you did in Columbus, where they treat the roads, weather's coming, we're going to lay down some.
Youngstown was the same. Youngstown, we got 4 times as much snow than we get down here.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Liverpool, in Toronto, and it's the same as getting it in Youngstown, but I learned to drive in Pittsburgh, and they just drive different in Pittsburgh than they drive in Youngstown.
So we're saying
Youngstown and Liverpool, I bet y'all.
So I would definitely say it has some region to it. I mean, look at Florida. It rains and the roads get slick.
There's no common sense in Florida.
Right.
And so I got a friend who was picking me up from the airport, and her dad was like, hey, like, it rained, be careful. And she's like, Dad, I live in fucking Ohio. Like, what are you talking about? And she goes, Drew, fucking, I spun out. I don't get that shit. And I was like, that shit's new to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think one of the pieces to look at, because, look, I think every single person at this table at some point in time has looked at somebody. Well, hell, one of the third episodes we did, we talked about common sense and uncommon sense very briefly. So I'm pretty sure we've all gotten on our high horse for 2 seconds and been like, "What the fuck? That's common sense." Like, how did you screw that
I did
up?
it on the way here.
Yeah.
I got a new job. They bought me a company vehicle. It's one of those little tiny transit vans.
Yeah.
With no windows. So I go to back out of my spot, and all of a sudden I hear this loud engine revving behind me and a horn blaring. I look in my rearview mirror. This is like big old lifted shit. I'm in Circleville, so it's all redneck white trash, right? And this dude's yelling. He's got his window down. I look in my side mirror, and I see a head sticking out, and this dude's yelling something.
Yeah.
So I just politely put it in park, hop out, and he's like, "Get to going." And I said, "Hey, what's wrong, man? How have I wronged you?"
Yeah.
He's like, "You put out right in front of me." I said, "I got no windows." I pointed at the van like, "I got no windows. My bad."
Yeah.
All right. And I'm like, he should have seen a van put out in front of you with no windows. He probably didn't see me.
Yeah.
It's an honest mistake. But this dude was like, it probably didn't help till he's all mad until he saw me step out, and then he was like, I'll calm down now.
Yeah.
Like, that dude looks like he doesn't have anything to live for. And chill out. But yeah, it's just, I mean, for me, if that happened to me, like, it'd be frustrating. It was in an alley. How fast are you supposed to be going down an alley anyway? But I backed out slowly. It's got the beep alarm on it. And I didn't even touch the gas. I just coasted out. And he got all mad. And I was just like, if that happened to me, I'd go, okay, that guy probably didn't see me.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and he's obviously old enough to at least drive. So he must, maybe it's Circleville's one of those regions where it lacks a lot, I think. That's
common sense or driving skills.
Both.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. All right, what else? Along the same lines, you've been chirpy.
I've gotten in trouble with this a lot in the sense of, okay, I'll bring up my poor wife. I'll get into this. What I feel is common sense typically will relate to like what's in my brain. So like she'll ask me a question and I'll feel like that should just be commonly known, so like I'll cop an attitude and then, okay, that sucks. So that's something I actively work on, trying not to let my facial expressions let someone know this is a stupid fucking question, and I even with Project Lift with our coaches, like I try to keep that new, and it's like, okay, we're going to do this position, blah, blah, blah. And and I'm just kind of like, ugh.
Like, you should know this.
Yeah, to a point, but then I also have to like reflect. Okay, one, have I taught this well? Two, is it common sense? And I think in any relationship where you see that, like, oh, it's in my brain. How do you not know my thoughts? There's that balance when it comes with the common sense that I know I get in trouble.
Yeah,
where I feel I've gotten a little bit better, but yeah, I'm totally able to be like, no, like
I get in trouble with my wife a lot too, because as you guys know, I will say stuff a lot. Well. You know me pretty well. Martelle knows me a little better. She'll say or do something, and I'll just look at her like, "What are you thinking?"
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm just thinking, ask her a question. But the way I say it is like, "Hey, what the? Like, you should know better. This is stupid." And she'll be like, "What?" I'm like, "No, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean it that way."
Facial expressions. Yeah.
And I'm like, "What are you doing? Or why did you do this? Or what?" And in her mind, she's got whatever the task is, whether it's cooking or cleaning or what something we're doing with the kids. This is what makes sense in her mind. Well, in my mind, when I get home, after being on the road for 13 hours or something, I go, what the hell did you do today? Like, what is all this? What's this mess? I thought we were cleaning. It's spring, now we got like all these, it's just, so I'm the same way. To me, I'm going, she's not using her common sense, but common sense should tell me to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah. Yep, I completely understand that.
I feel you on that one.
Yeah. What about you? You're quiet, Brandon. Talk.
I do it with my kids.
Yeah.
Yep. So I got an 11-year-old and a 6-year-old.
That's my favorite part of going to Martelle's house to record.
Yeah.
The family interactions.
It's the kids. So it's, How many times has a kid broke a bowl?
You gotta be kidding me.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
The one and only Dr. Richard Alm just walked in.
And I had a podcast mic. Whiskey. I don't know. Is this an appropriate?
No, we're good. Get over here.
Come on in.
I'll help set you up somehow.
Come on in.
This just got out of hand.
This is awesome. I love a man who shows up with a mic and a headset.
All right, keep talking, Brandon. We're listening.
So, with the kids, they'll break something, a bowl or something like that, dealing with trying to get dishes done, and it's clean the table off, get everything done after dinner, just do something, and they'll take the youngest, the 6-year-old. She's dropped, a bowl on the floor before, and it's shattered.
Yep.
Well, you take that, and then she'll grab the bowl and she'll throw it in the sink, and it'll make that loud like bang. And you're like, what are you doing? Why you do that? You know it's going to break.
Yeah.
And it's that common sense of don't do that. You know it's going to break, and then you get that. You try not to go like busting her ass or screaming like a banshee at her because she's sick. She doesn't know. But then the 11-year-old immediately like snaps into like what we call mother hen.
Okay.
And starts yelling at her like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing?" And then you're just like, "What?" And then you snap into action.
Yep.
And it's a whole like.
They need a better. It sounds to me like they need a better father figure.
Maybe. Maybe. And so for me, it's a common sense of not snapping into the action of yelling at the 6-year-old for dropping, because she knows better, but she's still learning.
Sure.
And then not yelling at the 11-year-old for trying to be a mother figure and yelling at the 6-year-old because she's trying to be like protective mom and teaching and doing what older sisters and siblings do.
Yeah. And it
only gets worse.
You think it's bad with that age. I got a 3-year-old and a 19-month-old, and I'll sit there and be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm looking at him going like, "Oh, wait a minute. You actually don't know.
You really don't know what you're doing."
Don't know. And I've been there.
Well, I've told Aaron a number of times, kids scare me in that sense of looking at it's not just the things you say, but also your actions.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And just what they're interpreting, what they're taking. And like where I just described my lack of control of, oh no, Chelsea, like you should know that, holy moly. I babysat Aaron's kids one night and I was like, poof. It took me about 5 minutes where I was like, whew, okay.
See, Aaron, you're talking about your kids. Your kids are closer to mine. Mine are 5 years and 8 months. My 5-year-old is he's a little version of me, which terrifies me. We were out to lunch last week and took a few friends out to lunch, and he was on a booth seat between me and one of my buddies, and him and his wife. And he looked over at her and was kind of like nuzzling her and playing, and he wiped his nose on her sweater sleeve. And she looked down and goes, "Did you just wipe your nose on me?" And he goes, "Oh, that was embarrassing." So it's like he knew he shouldn't have done that. But anytime he does something now intentionally and looks at me, he goes, "Oh, that was an accident." So that's why I'm like 5-year-olds have some of that common sense.
Yeah.
But he's already like me and just trying to use those words to get to explain why I don't use mine. Basically, is what I do. So
it's so funny because we talked about this a little bit. I can't remember what episode it was, but it was on the self-worth episode, and we were talking about like kids and how parents kind of like put their self-worth in their kids and things like that. And where you get like I talked about how I can see how parents get that like embarrassed in public feel like you're embarrassing me, right? When you kind of push that on your kid. But if you actually like sit back and take 2 seconds, you look at it and you go like, are you shitting me? The kid's 3 or the kid's 4 or the kid's 5.
I'm a bad dad then because I don't get embarrassed. I point and laugh.
Well, no. So that's like
like that one's mine.
Well, but the majority of it, you know what I mean? Like it's and there's been
the
moments.
Nose wiping on somebody. It's kind of, actually, I honestly just looked at him and went, "What is wrong with you?" And he just looked at me like, "What?"
Well, but I mean, it's that matter of if you actually just took 2 seconds to realize. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, my kid the other day, Maverick, we have him in T-ball. And not last week, but the week before, he was just like...
He's in T-ball at 3?
Yeah.
That is real young.
Yeah. But here's the thing, and that's the problem, is the T-ball program that they did is like 3 to 5. And so they let 3-year-olds in there. But it's a little more organized than it should be for a 3-year-old. So they're like, what's rule number 1 of baseball? And we're like, what, Coach Brody? And he's like, don't play in the dirt. And I'm like, really? That's rule number 1 of baseball?
You're putting a 3-year-old out of a giant sandbox.
And that's
you
the
gotta
rule?
be kidding me. But it's like he wasn't having it that day. You play you play the cards the way you can, where it's like, hey, well, let's just watch, see if at some point in time you get excited to go, okay, cool, I do that thing. Run around. Long story short, at one point in time, he's running the bases like crazy. And I had to go kind of just like run over and pick him up. And he lost his shit. And was just like, I don't want to be part of this. You know, like, I'm done. I want to go over here. I want to play with baby. And they scream and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, whatever. Like, it's fine. That's what you want to do. Let's go this way. It's
you're 3.
Yeah, you're 3 years old. That's
I don't need a trophy from you this year.
Yeah, and you can see like the look in some of the parents' eyes, like that look. Oh, I bet he's embarrassed. I'm like, nah, man, kid's 3. Like, what did you want him to do? Like, sit there, stand still in a ready position, and catch a ball? Tell him not to play in the dirt. He's sitting here. I mean, no offense. I played baseball for years, but you sit there and watch somebody hoping the ball maybe comes to you.
Well, that was
you're going to play with the dirt. I was fucking 14 pulling grass out of the ground and throwing it into the air watching it, let alone like
you played right field, didn't you?
I was a shortstop for a while, and then
until they realized you weren't good.
Yeah, then they were like, whoa, mistake.
Like, let's go put him where nobody can hit it. See, that's the thing with Huck. We were at his second T-ball practice, and they were hitting around. They had him playing second base, so they were starting with third base and what they call like left center, going around all the kids. And Huck's playing second. So by the time he gets the pitcher, third base, left center, shortstop, he's like, they're never hitting me. He's getting frustrated. And he went, Daddy, I don't want to play T-ball. It's boring. I said, buddy, I did it for 16 years. That's the game. Get in there. Like you're learning to have patience. You learn to be part of a team. So when your team does something, you back them up and you tell them good job and all this. But yeah, it's at that age, it's definitely I don't know what to say. It's a conundrum. The first game, the coach started him at catcher, and they got all this gear on that was geared for people like 8 years old, and he's 5. And the first ball he went off after he fell flat on his face. The other coach from the other team held him up, and he goes, I'm sorry, that was just an accident, By the end of the game, though, he was so into it. Yeah. And when he left, he asked the coach, he said, can I always be catcher? And she said, well, we'll have to see if we take turns. And he goes, that armor is mine, is what he told her. So he called his armor. So, like, now he's totally into T-ball. He's all, every time he's like, when's my next T-ball game? And he got new armor that's smaller. And he's just, like, stoked. So he calls himself Transformer Huck, and he'll actually
Transformer Huck?
Yeah, he transforms into an airplane by laying flat on his face on the ground, like nose to the ground, arms spread out. And that was all funny until we went on a vacation and stopped at a gas station. And while my wife was in there, he decided to show one of the attendants by laying on the gas station floor. So, speaking of common sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny.
That's what we're talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about...
All I get is like T-ball, kids, it's difficult,
so we're
playing in the dirt. That's all I'm getting so far.
Yeah, tonight's topic is actually common
Player
sense.
5 has entered the game.
Yeah. We're actually talking about common sense. Right, and
yes,
nice.
Yeah, and so the Richard All, if you didn't hear, has shown up. Dr. Richard All.
Hi, I'm Randy. I just saw a guy with a beard walk in with whiskey and a microphone.
This is
Brandon. Crazy.
Anyway, so
that's me, guys.
Bring it back and catching Alm up in the process to the common sense thing. So we're talking about common sense. What is common sense? Brandon, our description or our definition again?
Our definition is sound practical judgment concerning everyday matters.
Yeah, so that's the Google definition, or at least what the internet has told us so far. And so what we've branched off to talking about is, is what we think of common sense different than what other people do, and can it be regional? Right? So, like, what's common sense in this area isn't the same as somebody that would common sense there. And then where we were going with all the T-ball and kid talk was essentially the idea of, talking about how kids can learn things earlier on, but realistically, like, expecting a kid to know something at the age of 3 to 5 and assuming it's quote-unquote common sense when they're freaking 3 to 5 years old is the most ridiculous process possible.
I think, now that you mention it, too, I think the whole age of the time we learn common sense could be regional.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely different ways people are brought up, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, so there are people that invest in their kids, like you're talking about your kids in T-ball and doing the tumbling, and I just know you invest in your kids. You said, I'm getting off Facebook more, I'm spending more time on You're investing in your business.
3 years in, and I have not gotten any money back. So I don't know if it's a good investment. Or
well, is it learned then? Yes. Or is it something that you have?
Well, and I think that's where we're kind of going.
Touching on,
Yeah, we touched upon. So if you haven't figured it out yet, that door doesn't close yet. Yeah. And so that's because Dude and AJ took it off its hinges earlier today, and now it doesn't close. Right. So we were talking about, is there a difference between common sense and initiative? Right. So maybe you realize something is wrong. So it's not like you lack the common sense or the sense to fix it. You're just too freaking lazy to actually take the time to fix it. And so I think some of that stuff where if you bring it back to, is it learned? It has to be learned.
Oh, yeah.
If it's something that is projected on from the standpoint of, sound practice and everyday matters, it has to be something that, A, you have experience with, you get to experience on at least a repetitive manner, right? And then in a manner of whatever that is, hopefully along the way, somebody has helped you bridge the gap to figuring out how the hell to deal with it.
But there are certainly siblings that some have better common sense than others. Mm-hmm. So you have two kids raised seemingly in the same home. Maybe they're both male or female, and one of them has a lot of common sense, and the other one does not.
The other one's an idiot, is what you're saying.
Not an idiot. There's a complete difference between intelligence and common sense.
Well, I'm not smart enough to know that difference, so I just call him idiot.
Thanks. You have a fantastic beard, though, so you can just play that card wherever you want.
That's pretty much the only card I got.
Yeah. But no, I agree. We talked about this on the last episode. One of the episodes, who knows? I think it was about family, but my brother, my sister, and I are three completely different people. I would like to think I have a lot of common sense. I don't know if that's true or not. Whatever. But I would like to think I have a lot of common sense. Now, I'm not saying my brother and my sister don't have common sense, but if in my brain, the things that I know that are regular. Who's the dumb one of the three?
Come on.
None of us are dumb.
Let it out.
I will say none of us are dumb. Emotionally,
which one makes the stupidest decisions? I'll put it that way.
Ooh. I don't know. I've made some dumps.
I feel like you can't win this if you answer that question. It's like,
I don't
Welcome
care,
to our podcast.
Yeah. But I think one of the pieces that kind of goes into that whole entire mix is that what I think is common sense, like even down to the point where some of the stuff that we talk about day to day on this podcast, where it's, getting better, dealing with confrontation, not stepping out of here, doing all that stuff. To me, that stuff has now become common sense in my brain.
Yeah.
But it's not when you get down to the emotional aspects of how people deal with things and the way they're raised and what their backgrounds are and attempting to be empathetic and coming where they're coming from. The things that I think are common sense are not. And it's my entire life. Because think about this. I'm going to drive tomorrow morning. I'm going to leave my house at 5 o'clock in the morning, drive to Ripley, West Virginia, teach a 6-hour seminar on active shooter, stay there the night, teach another 6-hour seminar on active shooter. To me, it is common sense that after you take my seminar, you would then pursue continuous training in self-defense. Right. Because no matter how successful you are, no matter what your background is, you could be a freaking billionaire, but you can get shot in the fucking face tomorrow, and self-defense is the one thing. Self-defense and wellness are the two things that no matter what your background is and what your life is, can take you out tomorrow, right? Yeah. So you can be rich as hell, and you can pay a bunch of doctors, but if you live a shitty lifestyle, you're eventually going to probably succumb to some type of disease, right? Self-defense is no different. So to me, when I get done with my seminar tomorrow, all of the 86 people that have signed up for this over the next 2 days are going to go like, well, that makes total sense. Let's go and learn self-defense more. He just showed me how to do it, but they won't. Maybe 3 of them.
Well, it's kind of like that shooter seminar you guys have coming up, right?
Yeah, well, so that's what it is. I'm just teaching how to do it.
Exactly. Well, okay, so I have some, or no, there was one that was, I think it was you.
The 6-week self-defense, or defensive shooting class.
Defensive shooting. So I grew up around firearms. My dad was a light hunter, but my wife's family, they're all mountain men. They hunt more food than they buy, and so we've got this understanding of how firearms work. Well, when I went and got my concealed carry license, I thought, cool, now I'm legal to carry, it's concealed, I can defend myself. And then a few years after getting that, I found Sean Baird, who was at Fusion at the time, and he talked me into coming to try his course for free. And then the first time we did weapons disarm seminar, and this dude that's 145 pounds, like literally half my weight, took a pistol out of my hands before I could blink. I went, oh, I don't know how to defend myself. Yeah. And that's when I got into Krav and started going, and then I come up here, and there's so many people in Columbus that all these tiny women are kicking my butt. And I'm sitting here as this big dude going, I really don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of that, like you said, common sense says go ahead and pursue that.
Our common sense. But the one thing that I've learned over time.
But most people think I got my CCL, I'm good.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I need. I don't need to learn Krav. I don't need jiu-jitsu. I don't need to be fit. Because you've heard it more than me, and I hear it all the time. Well, I just pull out my gun and shoot the guy.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing
that's real easy to say.
The one thing I've had to decipher over the years, and I think I definitely know you can, but I have a feeling that he definitely can with the depth of knowledge he has on his subject, and I'm pointing at all. But one thing I've had to learn over time is that, and I think that's where some of the questions I came up with on this topic, is what I think is common sense, I know isn't. Like, it's not common sense to be going one way or the other, like, on this type topic. And it's based off of whatever the background of the upbringing is. Some people are drawn to this, some people are drawn not to it. But the fact of the matter is it's not. And so, like, looking across the table at Ulm, you would think that after having numerous conversations with him about movement patterns and bracing and all this type of stuff, and seeing him work with athletes and understanding how important that is, like, you would think, it's not, you would think that coaches and instructors would be seeking out things like that on purpose out of common sense, because it's going to make their longevity of athletes and make them better for form, but they're not. And I know for a fact he knows that.
So can you speak on what your background is? Because I just met you as you walked into this podcast, so probably the listeners
You should know everything about it if you've listened to all 21 of our episodes to this point.
He's only been mentioned 21 times.
Yeah.
Well, I listened to half an episode on the way up here. I'm going to be honest. Mike Rose had all my attention, guys. I'm not going to lie.
Dr. Ohm gets mentioned in every episode.
I haven't listened to every episode. I'm sorry.
All right, so go ahead, Ohm.
I'm a chiropractic physician, and I get into weightlifting and biomechanics and all that.
Body movement. And
he's been practicing his humble.
Yeah, whoa.
He's being super humble.
Pretty much you said I'm a chiropractor.
I'm definitely in the bathroom now. Says, how am I going to say this?
Okay, if they ask me what I do, I've got to shorten my 30-minute autobiography down to 30 seconds. How do I do it?
I love the body and how the performance and all that kind of crap, and so I just like studying that. So the stuff that they talk about all the time, whether it's stress management or sleep or lifting weight, it doesn't matter. I just like all that stuff.
I love the body and how it performs.
I was on board with that part. I'm I mean, depending on whose body we're talking about.
He was in the Olympic trials twice in throwing.
Oh.
He doesn't like to mention that.
Here's what you have to understand. So let me, because he won't.
Well, I had a feeling
because I'm a wannabe has-been athlete. My wife is an actual has-been athlete.
Well, I played baseball up until 10th grade. That's I don't know if you knew that.
You got that going.
About me.
But no, to catch everybody up, because we have talked about Alm a lot. Yes, he is a quote-unquote chiropractor. I'm using air quotes. But his understanding goes way past what I would say is common sense belief around what chiropractic is, right? Most people think going to chiropractic,
you get an alignment,
crack, pop here, put you back into place, and send you on your way. Alm will not only look at whatever the symptoms are and things like that, but he'll really dig down into the cause. And it's not a chiropractic visit. It's completely holistic approach to getting proper movement. Yeah.
Why do you keep coming back with the same issue? What are you doing?
The best part is he'll hold you like he cares. Like when he's in there and he gets a hold of you.
Beards touch.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and you I leave a changed person both physically and emotionally,
spiritually.
Now, when you say you change physically,
oh wow,
yeah, this one's definitely taking.
Does that cost extra? That's
well, no.
But to try to pull us back to what we were talking about, we're basically when we're talking about common sense, it sounds like we've divided into two things. One is a learned. Like through just doing things, you're like, okay, this is what has been done, and this now makes sense. You're training in martial arts and with weapons and all that stuff. You've learned, okay, well, this now makes sense, and I think we've been saying, okay, that's common sense.
Yeah.
But I think someone that has good common sense, they will have the ability to discern the things that are the most practical and make the most sense, even with no exposure to it. So they would walk in, they would watch you training and be like, well, why are they doing it like this? And then you'd go, that makes sense. Like that's someone that can just sort of water it down, see what are all the things at play, and then be able to basically just see the chessboard better. Like someone that has really good common sense, I think is going to be more right brain, like really understand, have a creative side and be able to sit back. My friend Robert Lardner is the most creative physician I've ever met in my life. He's the same way.
Yeah.
So I think that there's two kinds of, I don't know if they're both common sense, but there's two ideas that we're talking about. One is a learned, trained, you get it through experience. Right? So things that are commonsensical to you, Aaron, just because of your background, or Drew because of his background, or whatever the fuck you guys do. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Too late.
Too late. You can delete that in post,
nope.
right?
No, we don't do anything.
Beep.
Yeah.
So things are practical or sensical to you guys because of your training, but I think someone with really good common sense would be able to figure that out even without any exposure to it. So it's almost like two different kinds of
So I have two comments to that. And the first one is, do you feel like you have pretty good common sense?
Yes.
Okay, so if I took you downstairs...
Why is that funny?
It was just the aggressive...
yes! He went close to the mic, but he was like,
I actually showed up. I felt like this was my topic this week, and this is why I'm here. If I took you downstairs and I have what you've seen out of what I do with self-defense, You think that if I walked you through a 1 hour lesson, you could tell me whether it's bullshit or not?
Yes.
Ooh, yes,
wow.
No, I just think that, like,
I was true. Like, let's go.
And here's the thing, because
I think Aaron's good enough that he could BS his way through something.
Well, and that's where I'm kind of going with it, because we talked about this before. We talked about this actually on episode 21, where we were talking about like instructors and opinions and research and facts and stuff like that. And and I can tell you this from experience over the years, but there are people that are charismatic enough and not only just charismatic enough, but actually believe what they are saying, whether it is true or not.
Or have enough truth in what they're saying that they can sort of pull one over on the audience.
And so if you have that combination, that's a nasty combination if it's not correct, right? Well, and so where the second point that I want to go with is maybe it's not so much a matter of common sense. I think anything specific category isn't so much common sense, or the term common sense. I don't think it's a savvy to be able to decipher through things. Because if you go back to whatever the literal definition is, if we actually stick with that literal definition, it's sound practices and everyday matters, right?
Right. So your everyday matters.
And I think you're getting more to logical thinking.
Is that a bad
thing?
But
those are different.
No,
I think those are different.
So,
that's what we're saying.
I
agree.
And I think more so to what you're getting to is the going through your seminars and going through that practice and everything else isn't more of a common sense thing. Yeah. It's more of a logical thinking on how to get through whatever it is to disarm somebody, to take somebody down, is more of a trained practice of logical thinking.
Yeah.
It's common sense at a granular level, not a common sense at a higher level of, I shouldn't put that gas can next to the fire. It's going to explode.
And see, that's where I think at least in my mind, where some of these differences come into play, and why I think some of the questions that we're talking about matter, because I think the term common sense is thrown around very erratically.
Right. It's usually talking about the lack of. Somebody doesn't agree with something else does. They said they're dumb, they lack common sense.
It's common sense. Why would you do that, right? But I think sometimes when it's an askewed thought, because, yes, put a gas can next to fire is not good.
Right.
Assuming that's kind of common sense. Don't put your hand in fire. That's relatively common sense. Stabby knife, pointy things.
I call that trial and error.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but at some point in time.
Yeah, but somebody with common sense wouldn't do that.
Right.
And that's
so those very simplified things, I think, will fall into that category of common sense. I think the problem with throwing it around in any matter is that it then becomes into specifically, so anybody on alms level in that specific industry, there's a base of common sense there. And anybody on Drew's level when it comes to weightlifting and mentorship and coaching, there's a level of common sense there. And anybody who does self-defense for X amount of time, there should be a level of common sense there. But the term...
Nobody's didn't mention us.
Right, because we don't do anything.
Yeah,
well, when it comes to chasing Sean's chicken... I'm just kidding.
First off, it was a bull. And secondly, it chased me.
Yeah. But, realistically, when it goes into it, there's a subset of cat. I have no idea what that is.
What are we doing?
I don't know, but I love it.
The ice cream man is here.
Is there a toy in here?
There might be.
Of common sense.
But it's Martelle, isn't it?
It's not me.
It's Chucky.
We'll find out. Oh, it's definitely a kid's toy. It's over there. But anyway, where I'm going with that is... but the term, throwing around the term common sense, the way that most people throw the term common sense around, it's usually based off of dumb shit that we know that not necessarily everybody else should know.
So it's not...
Does that make sense? Or at least in my experience.
I'm with you. By definition, then we're kind of all getting very specific. By definition, when we say it's common sense to you, that's really not common sense.
Don't stand in front of a car that's going 50 miles an hour.
Yeah,
common sense.
But think about it like this. So it sounds like if we were to water it down, common sense is obvious. Right? So don't put your hand in fire. Obvious.
But is it obvious to everyone?
I know, but I think what we need to do is we need to realize that something that is obvious to Aaron in the realm of weapons is not obvious to me, because the amount of information and knowledge that he has vastly outweighs what I have. So things that are just obvious to him are completely different because of experience. Same thing with Drew. Drew's watched more people lifting than the average person. So his... the stuff that he's studied, the experience that he has with athletes is going to make things obvious to him that would not be obvious to someone that just walks in the gym. So I wonder if the definition of common sense if we were to take away just the everyday activity thing of it, is just someone's ability to identify the obvious. Like, okay, don't walk in front of a car. Obvious. But if we talk about active shooter stuff, well, okay, don't point the gun at yourself. Obvious.
Yeah.
But then there's things that Aaron would be like, dude, why would you do that? And I'm like, I don't know.
They're like, what am I doing wrong?
And it's because he knows, hey, this is how the clip works, or hey, this is where your safety is.
Magazine.
You shouldn't do this. Is it wrong? Is clip wrong?
It depends.
Yeah,
it depends on the firearm.
Yeah, it's a
joke.
That's a dumb gun industry joke. That would be like me.
A rifle and a gun.
That would
right?
be like me coming in and saying adduction instead of abduction when you're referring to it. Like it's not that big of a deal.
I don't even know what either of those are. So
exactly, there you go.
But so hold on. So let's stay on top. What do you guys think about that? Where
I agree.
Common sense is obvious, and the more information you have in a subject, then different things become obvious to you.
Right. Well, you were going down two paths originally, where you were going down more of a learned path versus an obvious path. So, and that's what one of the things here because I did some research just earlier today and yesterday, is one of the things that came down is the everyday understanding of common sense derives from historical philosophical discussions. And Aristotle was I can't pronounce anything.
Philosophical.
Now it's definitely one of our episodes.
Right. Philosophical
I've not heard him use 4-syllable words ever. You guys have elevated this man.
Aristotle was the first person to talk about and discuss common sense. So does common sense come from an ingrained DNA thing as well, and then also a learned thing?
But that's what.
Do feral kids have common sense? I mean, because there are feral kids, and just kind of going to like the most extreme thing that I can think of. Huck is a feral kid.
Absolutely.
I mean, Randy is doing nothing to raise this child. So
I make sure he doesn't get a disease, and I make sure he has food.
Yeah, you
put a bowl out at night.
Pretty much.
So is it one?
But I think what
food kid, figure it out. I think use your common sense.
It's 5. He knows this. You guys teach girls. I just teach get the chips to your mouth. It's not that hard. But I think what you were talking about, the obvious, I think that we can look at it as two different definitions. So common sense would be everybody knows fire's hot, don't jump in it. Aaron knows don't do that with your firearm. It's obvious. So I think that's two different definitions. I would say that common sense is the dumbed down thing it's the a priori. We all agree with this. It's kind of like in the church realm, and I know this is a church podcast, but if you're Lutheran or Presbyterian or whatever, okay, we all kind of believe God is God. We have different ways of doing things, but we all kind of believe that. That's kind of the a priori. I think with common sense, everybody knows don't jump in a fire. Don't wreck your car on purpose. Don't stand in front of a moving car. Then you get into the obvious is when you get into the specifics. So with your knowledge of the body and how it works, with your knowledge of Aaron's knowledge of the self-defense and the firearms, how it works, I wouldn't say that becomes common sense with the way you were talking. I would just say that it's more obvious to Aaron that that's what needs to be happening. Does that make sense?
But I think that with his knowledge, he might say, well, that's just common sense.
He would say that, but that goes back to him saying we use the definition very loosely.
I know, but I agree that I do think that common sense typically is used in a context where it is just talking about, like, dude, why did you touch that hot pan? It's common sense not to. But I was trying to just dig in a little bit deeper and figure out, well, what exactly, what is the essence of this? What's going on in the brain?
We're from Southern Ohio. You can't do that with us. Go digging deeper.
Well, no, but I two things I want to say to that point, and kind of where Alm's going is, generally the assumption. So, I've known all of you in some form or fashion long enough. There's enough. I know enough information about each and every single one of you, right? So there's this random, nobody's actually signed off on it, but this understanding or this social contract, about the amount of knowledge you and I share,
right,
and the amount of knowledge you and I share, and the amount of knowledge him and I share, and the amount of knowledge that Drew and I share, right? And so when I'm standing across from Drew and I'm having a conversation, if I drop the term, well, that should be common sense, it's because I would hope it's because I understand what I think he should know, or he knows this amount of information. I'm making an assumption that he understands that amount of information and that this thing we're talking about should meet that, right? And that same common sense line, or me dropping common sense, might not come up in the same context with him. It would be a little different with Alm, and a little different with you, and a little different with you. If we started talking about, survival, and we started talking about religion, and we started talking about Krav Maga because of the amount of information I know you know about that, the things I would assume that, like, bro, you've been through this. This should be common sense to you, is not the same as talking to him because he hasn't had those same exact experiences.
Right. But then that goes back to the obvious thing.
Right.
With more knowledge, with more experience, you're able to identify different things as obvious.
Right. The step that I'm saying is there's a piece where I think that there's a social contract, which is like I'm making an assumption about the information you know.
Right.
I'm making the assumption. Right. Now, whether you do actually know that information and you take that like that's common sense and you go like, oh, crap, that should be. Like you might have just missed it, right? I just didn't process the information correctly. Or I'm assuming incorrectly. Right? That's something that I have to at least be aware of when I'm throwing around the term, well, bro, that should be common sense, right?
So really, maybe the reason we use common sense, we hear it so often is because we first talked about common sense just as a general term, right?
Yeah.
And then we talked about it being regional. What's common sense in Ohio isn't the same in Florida, as Drew mentioned, right? Mm-hmm. And now we're talking on a very personal level. Now it's coming down to a relationship between two people.
Yeah.
So really, maybe that's why we hear it so much is because it varies so much. It can really, it's not wrong.
Yeah.
It's just like you said, if you're talking to Drew about lifting, something you guys say is common sense where it's not with us. Well, then we talk about Ohio versus Florida winter driving.
The regional
we were talking about it earlier, yeah.
So common sense can be thrown around more of common sense. Everybody in the world, if they're of right mind and have an IQ over that of a walnut, should know you don't jump in a fire and just stand there. But then the common sense in Ohio versus common sense in Florida and winter driving back conditions differs. And then it breaks down even farther. So I think the reason maybe it's not getting thrown around loosely, maybe it's just getting used differently.
What's an example? You might have said this. I apologize for crashing with my whiskey and my Pellegrino on my mic.
Don't
just
apologize.
Running
this
through
was
a
quite
broken
possibly
door.
the best thing that could have happened.
Yeah,
Actually, I invited Dude earlier because he wanted to try his Dew Pitch bourbon. And I invited Dude, but we got the best bald, bearded person out of the deal. Like, if I had to pick between all of them,
with more common sense, I feel like he would put the door on better.
And
that door would have worked when he came through it.
Let's take it down and see if he does a better job.
And Dude would have shown up to drink bourbon, whereas Alm showed up and brought bourbon.
He brought
my drop.
He brought bourbon and a mic. Like, he didn't do nothing. He's like, hey, I'm here to act.
He brought headphones.
I'm not here to take from.
He knew it.
That's the negotiated drop-in fee, I think, for coming here. We've figured this for years.
Everybody's like, who's this guy? I got bourbon. All right.
He's good.
Settle up.
Well, so go back to what
you might have said this. My question is, I kind of contest the idea that it's regional, and I want to know, give me an example of something where, this is common sense in Ohio, but it's not common sense in Florida.
The example that Drew gave, go ahead.
The big example I gave was, going down to Florida, when it rains, the roads get slick. A lot slicker than they do here in Ohio. So I had a friend. Yeah, so I had a friend down. She was picking me up from the airport. We're spring break, having a good time, and her dad was like, "Hey, careful! It just rained." And she's like, "Dad, I live in Ohio." And she's like, "Dude, I totally spun out. Didn't even expect that to happen." So that kind of thing, I would have never guessed. Like, it gets slick when it rains.
But that ties into what I was saying, where something is so common, not necessarily learned. Well, I guess learned, yes, but it does require just that information. So something is commonsensical if and only if you have that information. So I wonder if it's more practical. So if we went back even farther and just thought like, okay, well, this is just practical. And if you have those things, the person with the capacity to have common sense is able to think practically about things.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you need information. You needed the information that, hey, when it rains in Florida, it gets really slick. Well, I didn't have that information if I live in Ohio because it rains more. Mm-hmm. So, there is obviously a knowledge part of it. So I wonder if commonsensicality. Can I go there? Can I do that?
You can do whatever you want.
You have more letters behind your name than any of us in here,
which allows me to make words up. So, I
have a Roman numeral 2 behind mine.
I have no letters behind my name, and I make words up.
You could make
sweet,
letters. Right?
But so if we think about it, I think that common sense definitely pertains to just everyday walking around life. But if we think about what is the brain behind someone who possesses common sense? The ability to identify the obvious, right, with the information that they have that will grow as they get more experience in something, or someone that's able to be very, very practical. So I'll go back to my friend, my mentor, Robert Lardner. I would watch this guy, and I'd sitting in clinic watching him practice. That's confusing that we have to use the same word. Watching him provide therapy to patients, and I would always go, well, that just makes sense. And I wouldn't think like he was doing this big, crazy, complex thing. He's able to just kind of look at it and think like, oh, okay, well, this makes the most sense here. This is the most practical. This is the most obvious. Now, to him, he's been in practice for 25 plus years. And I wonder if it is really more the ability to identify the obvious or identify the practical and act on it. And those types of brains are the ones that are present in the person with, quote, common sense.
Yeah, but I would the way that I would challenge what you're saying right now is that when it is used, both from a literal definition standpoint, which has the word common in it, which means the majority, right? So the majority should understand it. And the way it's generally thrown around, as in you did something that was dumb that should have been common sense. I would argue that it wouldn't need to require a person that can analyze a bunch of information and then process that in, as much as, like you are saying, it's just kind of common. So my rebuttal in the long term is that if we lack empathy and understanding and information, then the term common sense is unfair, right? Outside of the blatant obvious, don't step in front of cars going fast, don't put your hands in fire, don't stab yourself with a knife, like all that kind of stuff.
Well, off that too, I think, Rich, one thing you're saying, I hear a lot more creativity. You know what I mean? Like they're able to take all this knowledge, all this experience, and even if it's not common sense, as the person you described, and as I watched some of my coaches and some, athletes and going down that realm, who has the freedom to let themselves be a little creative with the information that they do know, to go, hey, I know this in this realm, this in that realm. If I put it together, I feel like it's going to be this. And it could work, and whereas it's coming off a little bit more of like, oh, that's common sense because, like, hey, you put this attribute and this attribute together, like, of course, that's common sense, but is it common to have that creativity to do it?
Mm-mm.
So I think what I'm doing is I by accident, I'm sort of leading us astray. Huh?
Confusing me?
Confusing. No, I'm just trying to figure out, like, what I'm trying to break into the word common sense, and not.
Well, and that's literally what this is about. This is kind of what we're breaking down.
So does it become uncommon?
So
sense?
let me. Yeah. Here's what I did while you all were being smart. I started Googling. And I'm sitting here looking at the board over there with all the the kind of
with the sweet hot picture of Aaron.
Yeah, with Aaron's rubbing his chest behind it.
I
was actually showing bracing. Thank you.
I would try to disgrace that picture every time I went into Lululemon.
Can I have that picture? Can you autograph that for me?
I kid you not. They took this while I was teaching a class, and we were working on sumo deadlifts, and I literally was talking about being able to keep the diaphragm down or keep the ribs down and talk. So thank you. Right. This is you know what? If you want to use this
common sense
for a DNS promotion,
I want to hang that in my office. What I want to
do. I'm dead serious. You can have it.
So
I want to hang it in my
your office. It's yours.
I'm hanging that in my office.
Yes! like in your personal office or in the clinic?
I will hang it. Pick a treatment room. 3 or 4.
Whichever one's best. Only 3 or 4, though, not 1 or 2.
Pick a treatment room.
No, because I'm not in those. I want that hanging in
Put it wherever you want. I'm coming over to see
just said pick.
No, seriously, it's yours. Like, I'm not kidding.
When I get treated, I am literally going to request that room.
Can I
disgrace that?
I need you to change whatever one it is. So if you pick 3, you have to take the 3 off the door, and you just have to put the Genetti room.
You know what's amazing is that I will absolutely hang that up there, have new patients come in, and give zero explanation what's going on. And it'll be in between like a picture of like a spine and like a shoulder anatomy, and then just this
one of those like inspirational ones with like a field of roses or daisies or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead, Randy.
See what happens when you let your body distract me. So what I was saying was, a lot of what you guys are talking about it makes a lot of sense. And obviously, the only letters I have behind my name are the Roman numeral 2 because I'm named after my dad. So I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm smart enough to recognize that. Maybe that's my common sense. It's knowing when I'm not. But the more I hear, the more it seems very, very specific to certain skill sets and certain traits and trades and the way. So I just looked up the word common. So now we're talking about different sense, what's obvious and what's practical and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And the word common says, by definition, is occurring, found, or done often, prevalent. And a lot of what we're talking about, we've just talked I don't know how long, about self-defense, about body movement, all that. And I would not consider any of that prevalent.
No.
So are we talking about common sense, or are we talking about, like you said, it's more specific to the conversation of two people in the same industry.
Well, I think it's exactly what gets me in trouble with my wife.
Right.
Of like something will happen, and I'd be like, "How do you not?" You know, or I'd be like, "How do you not know what I'm thinking?"
Yeah.
You know, I think.
How do you not know the square root of?
Because I mean, a lot of what we've spoken about today is not common amongst the five of us in this very room.
Well, and I think
if we say as a group, the five of us, if you guys start talking about body movement, I'm out.
Yeah.
You know, so that's 20% of the room.
I don't know that you're out.
I know how my body does not move like y'all's.
No, but
so,
you're
different. You can still have a conversation about it.
No, but if you understand how body movement,
understand how body movement is, and I know this because I've seen you coach and I've walked you through coaching and things like that. But
you taught me some of it. You have to kind of claim some of it.
Oh, yeah. But I was going to say, if you suck, that makes me look bad.
But if we go back then, because I like your point. If we go back to what is the definition, I really think it is like the identification of the obvious, or acting on the obvious, or executing the obvious.
So that could change situation to situation.
It can, and I do think with common sense, it must be applied to everyday things. But if you think about it, if somebody says to Aaron or you guys, in your specialty, if somebody says like, well, that's common sense, I think that's almost synonymous with the word obvious. Well, that's obvious.
Okay,
why would you do, like, you could even get into BJJ, like, why would you try to do this in that position? It's common sense to do that. So it almost is, if you break it down, it's almost like the word literally means obvious. Well, it's obvious that you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Can anyone, actually, let's challenge ourselves. Can we think of a time where the word obvious would not fit synonymously where that is?
I think it's hand in hand.
No, I think you got a very good point there.
But what I think what's interesting about him throwing in the word prevalent into this whole entire discussion is kind of one of the things we put up here, which was, how does it change over time? Because if you look at even just, everybody in this room can speak to at least 3 decades, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, 30 years ago I was 3, but whatever. Like, I can speak to 3 decades for the most part. And
wow, youngest guy in the room.
I know,
Way to brag.
Yeah, well, he's not far off.
Well, I mean, you're still younger than me.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, but the reality of the whole entire thing is, if I look at it, in the last 30 years in general, you're talking about the acceleration of the internet. You're talking about computers. You're talking about smartphones. You're talking about the addition of Facebook, Instagram, everything that goes on
everything
Twitter.
going from analog to digital.
Yeah, and so you have what was common sense and prevalent 30 years ago, 40 years ago, is no longer prevalent. So when I'm talking into a situation now, when we talk about how time changes things over it and how technology and research has changed things over time, like, there was a period in time where it was quote unquote common sense that if I'm going to eat something, it should be the low fat version of it. That was common sense. And now you flip and you look at modern day research and the way people attack things, and that's not the case, right? And you go all the way back to the food pyramid was suspectedly common sense. It was taught in school. You should have learned that in grade school.
But again, that goes back to that's a really good example. That goes back to what was obvious. Well, we were taught at that time that fat is bad. And so then it's obvious that, I'm going to choose white bread, over an avocado or something like that.
And so I think it's an interesting point to bring up, because if I'm 30 years old and I'm having a conversation with somebody that's 60 years old, you can't even – there's a very small set of things that between me and that person with a bridge of 3 decades could talk about that's common sense. And it's really going to come back to all of the basic things that were probably common sense 300 years ago, which is disease is bad, don't put your hand in fire, don't get stabbed, don't stand in front of a fucking car, and all those other types of things. It's a lot smaller. But
I think what you're saying is that it does absolutely involve the information in that context, whether you're saying BJJ or whether you're saying 1960s. There's information there that we have to account for. And then again, if we go back, common sense is the identification of the obvious.
Yeah.
But is it? Because give
me an example where it's not.
But no. But what I'm saying is the way
I like what you're saying, but
the way that
I like what you're saying, but you're wrong.
No, I don't know. I don't know if he's wrong.
I don't think that being savvy and being able to identify the obvious, I don't think that's common sense. Common sense still, I think that we use the term common sense improperly or under assumption, which is that you should know this should be common sense based off your information. But if we start getting to a point where it comes down to I can identify the obvious in a multitude of situations, that's a completely different skill set. I don't think that's common sense anymore.
That's not common. That's not prevalent across the
But I think that the brain that has common sense probably could do that in multiple contexts. So I agree with you that
But
you don't agree. So
no.
I think that we don't agree with this.
I feel like if I took you, if I had 6 weeks, I could convince you with 1 or 2 topics that you are unfamiliar with.
Sure.
I could convince you well enough, not to a stage of like completely bastardizing it, because yes, you can pick out the obvious, but I think there's a gray area in the middle where I could steer you down the wrong direction far enough that if you didn't take the time to actually invest in that and go deep on it, you wouldn't be able to figure it out.
Okay, I agree with that. But in that case, I'm trusting you as my, let's say that you were to actually do this to me and take me down this 6-week path that you're going to give me something that's 80% accurate but 20% bullshit. I actually think that because I actually trust you as an authority in, active shooter and weapons and fighting and all that stuff, that I would just allow that information to go into my brain unopposed. Mm-hmm. So then once that goes in, because you're being discursive, I would then say, oh, okay, well, that information, I trust Aaron, and so I'm going to take that. Now, what is obvious to me is wrong because of, you intentionally deceived me. I think that's a different thing. That adds layers to what we're talking about here.
But that doesn't become common at that point.
Right. And my argument to that would be that to me, and again, this comes down to personal belief and what you understand, right? I know it's spicy.
I gotta cut him off here. What do we got here?
Virgil Cane.
Virgil Cane.
Roundhouse.
Roundhouse is pretty legit. It's double barrel. That's why. Yeah, that's
amazing.
But I'm
just gonna make a statement. I just love double barreled whiskeys in general.
And shotguns.
Okay.
So, that's good stuff. But my caveat to you would be, to me, common sense is respect everybody, but don't actually fully trust anybody. Like, I question everything anyone does, right? And I mean, think about literally, like, and not bringing this back to anything, whatever. But we talked about this in a couple of. He had to sit down.
Hey, Drew, you get closer to that wall.
Yeah. But literally, like, think about this, right? Like, legitimately, and this is between me and you, right? Think about when you came over to film the box jump video. When you no.
Yeah.
Yes, right. Because we talked about it.
Hashtag one take.
Yeah. So this is
hashtag them just going at each other in the middle of the gym and me sitting back going.
Yeah. It might be on my website.
It still is at the enhancement. Yeah. But no. Here's the point that I want to make with that, right? So if you look at that from the level when you walked into the gym of respect I had for you and your knowledge base, right? So you came in. And I know, like, I had, to that point, it had already been probably about 2 years that I was learning from you at that point in some form. And then you hey, I want to come over, I want to film a video, all that kind of stuff, right? So if I went with what you were saying, which was I just trusted you on your ability to blah, 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 whatever, when you bring anything in, then I'm going to blindly look at that, right? And what was the first thing that happened? You started talking about box jumps. I said, okay, well, what are we filming? And you said what you wanted to film, and I said, well, what about this, right? And but all I'm saying is it's not a disrespectful manner as much as it is, to me, common sense is anything that comes across, I question it, right?
I don't think that I agree with you, and I agree that you are like that, and I am like that. I'm sort of.
Are you though? Because you just told me I could take you downstairs and I could tell you whatever I wanted.
No, I said if you wanted to do that, you could do that, but I am sort of pathologically.
Because I would take my shirt off.
Well, then I would just believe whatever you say.
For the record, when we got here.
Are we not supposed to have our shirts off right now?
I thought it was pants off. I got confused. Sorry.
What are pants?
Yeah.
Anyway. Continue.
No, but so I think that is absolutely true, but I don't think, while being respectfully doubtful of everything that comes in, I mean, that is literally a problem that I have, where anything that comes across my brain, I doubt initially. So I do negative proofs of everything. Yeah. If I can't prove it wrong, then it must be right. That's how I live, and it's cool sometimes, and mostly horrible.
How does Jackie feel about this?
I don't know how pumped she is about it. But my point is just very practical. Yeah. It's very commonsensical, and that is, I don't know if the ability to basically question whatever comes across your brain is considered common sense. Some of that's got common sense, and I think that we keep sort of going off topic. Common sense is pretty obviously about everyday stuff that we see.
Right.
You know, you're walking out to your car, you know, you're going to look both ways in a crosswalk. And when we give examples like I was using about, you know, the body or weightlifting or Krav Maga or active shooter stuff, well, we're out of the commonsensical realm and we're getting into, you know, what is practical and what is obvious. So I think it's on the same spectrum, but I think the context for someone has common sense must remain within the realm of activities that everyone is doing often.
And that's where I think the skew comes into play.
But even the crosswalk scenario is a taught and learned scenario.
Yeah, but it's one that I would say is prevalent.
Yes.
Yeah,
you know
and as you get older, you should. By the time you're 18, 20, you should know.
Right. If we go by the assumption we said earlier, which is by the time you're 18 or ish, you should have this subset of things on lockdown.
Absolutely.
Would you agree, though? So I think that's a great point. It could be learned. But would you agree that someone with common sense, if they've never seen a crosswalk, but they've seen cars, and they're 10, if they have good common sense, they would probably think like, well, cars are coming across here. I have no idea what these white lines are, but I got to look to make sure I'm not getting hit by a car. That would be common sense.
Right, but I don't know that'd be prevalent to a crosswalk.
Well, yeah,
that would be prevalent to crossing the road.
That would just cross any road.
My biggest issue, what you said too, is if somebody with a brain that has common sense can kind of generally at least get a grasp something of an understanding of something. And in one of the industries I worked in as a commercial electrician doing new construction, we could have the smartest HVAC guys and the smartest plumbers and whoever invented kids' toys that make noise in the background. But we'd have some great plumbers in there doing work, and they would look to us and say, "Well, why'd you do something that way?"
Yeah.
And these are guys that have been doing this 30 years. They're the best plumbers in the world, but they look at our electrical panel or the way we're in a pipe and have no clue why we did it that way.
Right.
Common sense does not supersede the education in that point. Does that make sense?
But again, that goes back to what is practical and obvious to someone
I know, but
with
you said earlier,
high levels of knowledge.
Right, and you said earlier that I guess I'm trying to think of how to say it. So somebody with a high level of knowledge in any given field. So you've got letters behind your name. That's all I know about you. But I'm saying somebody very educated.
That's forced upon him.
That's all you need to know.
So he just takes another drink like that. So, but I'm saying anybody.
I only ever put 2 letters behind my name when I'm out and about. But whatever.
Or even Aaron. I consider Aaron one of the most educated men. Actually, I just recommended him to a buddy a week ago. One of the most educated men in what he does. But if I had a question for him in my industry, even though he has common sense, he's not going to cross the road. He's not going to run across from Hillary without working. I say, hey, come look at this electrical panel and tell me why this breaker's hot.
I electrocuted myself several times. Still not learned.
I get what you're saying. You're saying it's more practical, but earlier you did say that somebody with a common sense brain should be able to come to an assumption or something.
I know, but I think that Aaron does have good common sense, and so if he were given adequate amounts of information, I think he could come to that conclusion.
But then is it common sense at that point, or is it just education?
No, I think once we get out of just the everyday stuff, then now we're just talking about practical thinking, which might overlap.
Okay, that makes sense.
It might be the same spectrum, but common sense does not apply to why is this breaker hot. Common sense does not apply to why did that person's knee go out in the second pull of a snatch. I mean that's not common sense. We use that term, and maybe this goes back to what you intended when you made the statement. We throw this term around.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the inappropriate times where we're using the term common sense are outside of the realm of everyday experience.
The prevalent.
Yeah, right. And that's what I said earlier about logical thinking and getting into the learned stuff and going past the. You're having issues over there.
Stop breaking stuff.
Going past the, we've got the over-encompassing common sense versus the logical thinking and the learned portion of getting down to the granular of common sense.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, the more and more we talk about it, that I start going into, and if you go back to some of the talks that Drew and I have had about, if you guys could only see.
Did that work?
My speaker.
There went.
There's the ohm. But this goes back to some of the conversations that Drew and I have had about empathy, right? Putting yourself in someone else's shoes, right? The assumption of common sense generally is almost, I say almost because it can still have some of it in there, but almost null and void of...
Failing miserably over here, by the way.
Of empathy. And I'm not helping you because it's too much fun to watch.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
But is almost null and void of empathy because the assumption, especially if I don't know anything about you...
This should be common
Chevy
sense,
Chase
right?
couldn't do this better than I am right now. There we go.
I love that you brought Chevy Chase up.
I mean, it's perfect.
Watching the finished product.
Should it not?
I don't know if this is common sense because this isn't in his area of expertise.
This is true.
It would be more obvious if we had a better understanding of the gravitational bearings on the instruments before us.
But wouldn't this fall under your common sense, Randy, of setting up production?
No, that's my dad and my brother.
But didn't you do this stuff?
No, I played
for
music.
him?
I'm a rock star, don't you know?
Whatever.
I just played.
I'm a rock star that has to go to work tomorrow.
Where I'm going with this is if I look across the table and I make the comment, hey, that's common sense. I'm making, again, it takes me back to that idea. I'm making an assumption about what you know. And if you did a certain thing that I believe should have been common sense, then obviously either, one, you didn't fucking know it, or two, in some form or fashion, whether it's an emotional issue, somebody else distracted, whatever it is, you're distracted enough to not be able to process the information correctly to do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's... all in all, it's kind of an unfair statement outside of the context of understanding the person across from you. Outside of, and I go back to this all the time, but outside of don't stab yourself in the fucking eyeball, don't put your hand in the fire, don't stand in front of a 50-mile-an-hour car. You know what I mean? Like, which is a relatively small subset of category. Me looking across the table and being like, well, yeah, if you lock your back out as absolutely hard as possible and go into extension compression syndrome, like that's obviously bad for you. Like, no.
I agree.
But again, I think that the statement that we throw this around and we use it incorrectly, it's when we apply the term common sense to things that are not everyday and common, right? So when you say something like, well, obviously you wouldn't go into an extension compression stabilizing strategy. Okay, fine, but that's not really the everyday thing. So I think that common sense is the identification of the obvious or the action on the obvious, right?
So it's the ability to be able to do that.
Yeah, to act on the obvious.
Or say, I don't know what I'm doing.
When we get out and we get into... I assume you do some sort of like electrical work.
Just say building maintenance overall.
Building maintenance, fine. So there's things that are obvious to you.
Right.
So I could erroneously put the term common sense in there, which maybe amongst other people that do what you do, that's common sense.
Right.
But I think that might be a case, Aaron, where you're thinking, well, that's not the right place to put it.
Right.
And it's because, yes, the word or that those two words together mean obvious or identification of the obvious or action on the obvious. But when you get out of the everyday life things, we're no longer talking about common sense.
Yeah.
Right.
We're talking about walking down the street, getting into your car. How do you put your kid in the car? Well, it's obvious you wouldn't want to slam their head against the, like you got to control their head or whatever. Okay,
that's, say you wouldn't
some
want
days.
to.
Some days.
Yeah.
Like maybe you shouldn't, but
No, but does that sort of, or try to define the term, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, I did come in midstream here.
No. And I think it's good. And it makes me, it bears the question to me because again, I'm always looking at from what my background is. My attempt is to always take what I believe is the obvious or what I believe is important at least, and then apply it to the everyday person, right? And so you can talk about pain points, you can talk about relating it to somebody, and you can talk about being empathetic. And so from a coaching standpoint or from a leadership standpoint or from a mentorship standpoint or from a parenting standpoint, right? So one of the questions that I think is interesting as we're having this conversation is, okay, if we can respect that the way that we look at things isn't common sense to everybody, right? Because all of our backgrounds are completely different. We might all be able to look at a specific movement right now because we're at least semi-familiar with it, but we're going to look at it from 5 completely different angles.
Yeah.
So take the snatch.
Absolutely.
Every single one of us understands what the snatch is. We've touched a CrossFit gym or a weightlifting program in some form or fashion. We
I would
understand what the
probably
snatch
give
is.
a different definition at first than you
Right.
were.
So, but the 5 of us are looking at it from a different place.
Right.
But you know what a snatch is.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying is,
saw one once.
It never gets old. It never gets old. And I would love if someone just fast forwarded to this.
I was just going to let it keep going.
Yeah, and I didn't even make
that needs to be sound clip. You know what a snatch is, right?
Snatch is paleo.
that
right?
one
was gonna let
along
it
with
keep going,
I
see how
love
long I
the
could-
body and performance.
Yeah,
But anyway,
those two together.
I'm going to say I'm expecting a meme out of that. I'm only saying that
no.
so it doesn't happen.
Even better, I'm going to take the sound clip of your definition of what you do, and I'm going to send it to Jordy, and I'm going to let him just have fun.
Why
with
would
it.
you include that?
I'm just saying.
Oh.
Yeah, anyway. So listen, but back to what I'm saying.
Common
so now
sense
look,
says you should just walk.
Look.
Right.
So you're teaching a seminar. I'm teaching a seminar. Drew's teaching a seminar or a class. You're dealing with...
Not teaching a seminar.
No, but listen, but here's the thing. Because you taught classes.
I did.
And you've taught seminars.
I did.
And you've apprenticed other people. You've helped other people. You've taught people things, right? You got kids. Same. Right. So whatever that is, you're in a whatever quote unquote leadership role, and you're talking to somebody that's underneath you that doesn't have the information that you have. So this is where things get interesting to me. How do I take a concept that I know and respect and apply it to their obvious? Right. So I look across the table and I look at a Dr. Holm and I look at, okay, I want to explain extension compression syndrome, right? Or strategy, whatever the fuck.
Come on.
Right?
Syndrome.
It's a syndrome. It's open scissors, whatever.
Whoa.
But I want to take it to them, right?
Wait.
So
What's open scissors? Because that means something way different.
Open scissors, if I may, is when in the sagittal plane, when the diaphragm and the pelvic floor are oblique to each other.
Yeah, that's about what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Same thing. Okay. Same thing. You just say it in Columbus. We say it in Southern Ohio terms.
So listen, Randy, right?
It's when your ribs are up and your pelvis forward. How about that?
This is
scissoring's just different where we come from. I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah. This is extension compression. Right? Okay. This is open scissors, right? So if you were to take a line...
Closed scissors is, I think, what you're talking about. Oh, right. Or touching scissors, maybe.
Anyway, dueling scissors. Anyway, so
can I leave you? Can I go?
No,
I feel like I've fucked myself here.
You're stuck up. But anyway,
I drove a Dodge Stratus.
So look, but if I look at you, right, and I look across the table, and I go back to, because I've attended numerous of your seminars and your clinics, and obviously we've worked together hands-on, and we've worked with athletes, and asked questions, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But in your seminar, okay, you have literally given the specific example of, as far as stabilizing when it comes to bracing and how things blow out and blah, 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 right out. I've heard if I put pressure on this side, it'll blow out the one side, right? So if I put too much pressure on one side as opposed to equally. I've heard the example of the empty pop can versus the full pop can, right? All those things coming into it. You've taken something that to you makes sense from an anatomical or physiological standpoint, and you've turned it into something obvious. If I give you a full can of beer and tell you to crush it with your hand, you're going to have a problem doing it. If I give you an empty can of beer and I tell you to crush it with your hand, it's going to be easy. I've taken something that is common sense or obvious.
You've made it obvious.
I've made it obvious, right? And I've gone ahead and then I've correlated it to this context, right? So for me, like, go back to the self-defense side of things. I can look at people and go, like, look, when we, like, this is a perfect example, because when I teach the active shooter seminars, when we start teaching defense, I don't teach it from a fancy standpoint. It's literally like, look, this is the gun. Where's the bad part of the gun? Well, on the other side where the bullet's going to come out. That is obvious. This is where the bullet comes out, right? So we all know that. Do you know that that's where the bullet comes out? Yes. The tiny circle on the end of the gun. Yes. Don't fucking stand in front of that. Oh, yeah, that's obvious.
I know, but I think that's getting out of where you would apply the word common sense.
Right. No, I
agree. As a good instructor, you're good at using analogy and whatever to explain it in a way that makes it obvious to the person.
Right. Well, where I'm going with this is, so as far as I'm concerned, after talking about this whole entire thing, the term common sense is used in a very bastardized fashion. It's problematic as far as I'm concerned. It makes assumptions when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
It makes assumptions when it comes to professionalism.
Drew was like really eager.
Yeah. So it's used. Yeah, the term's been bastardized as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to try to stop using it. But where I'm saying is, if we can respect that, if we understand that my version of obvious and my version of common sense and what is prevalent to me isn't the same as what's prevalent to everybody else, then as a good leader, mentor, teacher, whatever the hell I am, anybody underneath me, I have to respect that, and I have to be able to take what I believe is common sense and create that back or turn that back to something that is obvious to them. Or else I'm talking over their head, right?
Yeah, right.
Like if you walk in, and again, just because we've talked about you so much on our podcast, but if you walk in and you start talking to somebody about abduction versus adduction, and they don't understand the difference between the two, you're talking over their head. Right?
I know what abduction is. Subtraction's what gets me. I'm good with the abduction.
Right. So, but you get the idea, right? So it's Now I'm shifting it. I'm taking the conversation maybe slightly somewhere else, which is, okay, if we understand that common sense is, as far as I'm concerned, a very small subset, general universal common sense. I can go over to fucking Czechoslovakia and talk about the same exact thing, whatever.
I was thinking.
I thought that was common sense. That's totally common sense.
I got to protect my brothers and sisters over in the Czech Republic.
And you know what? I deserve that because I did know that it was a Czech Republic.
So that was common sense.
Yeah. I wouldn't know it was common sense. But.
You know, one
Petra,
thing.
Zuzana, Yana, I'm just here to protect you.
One thing I'm hearing is common sense. To the term, I think, as it's commonly started to be used, is a bit of a trap.
It's uncommon.
A bit of a trap for all of us, in the sense that it can get us in relationship trouble. It can get us in friendship trouble. It can get us in professional trouble. If we're trying to communicate with people and we start to get into that mode of, well, I know this, doesn't everyone?
Right.
That's a good point.
And that's the thing. Like, so one of the things I work with my coaches and friends around writing messages. It's part of the thing I kind of geek out in college and early career is, how can I write an email in a way that makes you take an action, right? Or how can I create a web page that makes you take an action? And if I write an email and think like, oh, there's no way they can't understand this, what am I doing in there? Am I really using empathy to understand that they're probably reading this in a short amount of time? I've put all the stupid sentences in one big paragraph, and I put the thing I really want them to know kind of in the middle towards the end. Pump the brakes, right? Like, one thing, don't put multiple things in this email. Let's, line space, break it up, and bold the damn thing that you want remembered.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you work with some people on that, going like how'd they not understand that message? And you go, you want to switch into that mode of like, isn't that comment like what do you mean? Look at this paragraph, right? And it's funny because I reverse it back. I was in college, and it was a friend of mine, student. He was the president of a club that I was in, not the barbecue club.
Wait, there was a barbecue club where
hell yeah.
He's a founding member. He's a founding member.
I would not have dropped out of two colleges if either one had a barbecue club.
You would have loved it, buddy. Would have got you through, right?
Fat joke?
No.
Oh, it should have been.
No, it's not, because barbecue club is guaranteed fun. It's the only thing I can guarantee fun.
That was all it said. Ohio State Barbecue Club.
Guaranteed fun. and when I was on the Oval, I would just walk around going like, seriously though, like, is there anything in life that I can guarantee
my barbecue
fun?
meat?
Yeah. The best was making freshmen go out and like market and go like, we have the best meat on campus. And I just like, I don't know why I would enjoy that.
That's all right, smart marketing.
Okay.
I gotta walk out. So if whoever's listening, Aaron and Drew, these are two of the most interesting dudes ever. Good conversations. Like the podcast. Quit fucking around. Just follow it. Whatever. And then these
guys. All right, I'm out of here.
Perfectly great. One's got an amazing beer. The other one brought amazing whiskey. So I mean, I have no qualms with these guys. Anyways, sorry about the crash party.
Thanks for coming, bud.
Good to see you, buddy.
Thank you for stopping by. Good meeting you.
We fist pumping.
Fist
pumping?
Hugging, whatever.
Rubbing beards. It's got to happen. All right.
Very good.
And there goes
we'll do
all.
the awkward, like the shake.
Awkward
fist
shake.
bump.
All right. Pick up where you were at. If you even remember.
He forgets.
I slightly forget.
Love you.
But no, it gets into
it
gets in that trap when we start to look down, expecting someone to know what we know. And you look at that writing the email, and didn't I clearly state that I wanted you not to use this door, or I wanted you to lock the door in this situation, or I wanted you to do this thing? Did you?
Yeah.
And it was fun because I had an experience to run the registration for a big event that a lot of people registered. And it just, I would absolutely get pissed because that feeling of like, is this not common sense, right? So here's a situation, right? There's a Team USA World Team Qualifier right here, right? Okay. And then there is a local meet. Okay, if you're registering, you have two different options. It's the local meet, or it's the Team USA World Team Qualifier. How many people would register for this? And then I would reach out to them and go, why did you register this? And they're like, I don't know. Or they're like, well, I mean, it sounds fun. It sounds cool. Like pump the brakes. So I kid you not. I kid you not. Each year I would make it my goal. Could I redesign this to have less of that?
Yeah.
Right. And by the last year I did this, it was so funny. You two I know would just love it if you would have seen the page. The page literally said Team USA World Team Qualifier, right? Local meet. Next to the team qualifier, it had parentheses and said, if you're not sure what this is, it's not for you. Right. And it worked.
It's kind of like one of those, like, if you have to ask the price, you can't afford it.
It really worked.
Oh, it does.
But that, I just...
Well, but I'd be the same way, being uneducated. I'd look at it and go, well, I want the cool one.
Yeah.
I want to go to Team USA, like, forget the local crap.
Yeah, I don't want that. But I think it's a trap because it's more now this term is turning into someone doesn't know what I know.
Yeah.
And it's the lack of empathy to understand, well, of course.
And we use that to degrade them is what you're saying. So we say, well, that's common sense. Well, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Well, it's
common sense to you or others in your industry, but it's not common sense. It's not prevalent across all different walks of life, all different. So, yeah, I mean, that's actually a good point.
Right. It's like Dr. Olm said. It's what's coming down to the obvious. It's what's obvious to you is not obvious to me. What's obvious to Aaron is not obvious to me. What's obvious to me is not obvious to you guys. I mean, so it's what's common is obvious to everybody, and then what comes down to it not being obvious.
Go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was just going to say it's one of those like Drew. I think summed it up probably the best. Is the term in itself is a fucking trap.
Right.
It really is because it makes the assumption that we're equal in some form or fashion when it comes to knowledge, and that's not going to be the base.
Unless the only time it is when it's truly common. It's truly prevalent.
And again, like
the fire.
Even in that case,
don't
like
stick your tongue in an outlet.
Well, one part of it now, the outlets that may be a little different, a little learned, but when you start to look at
I would hope by 18 it's common sense.
Well, when you start to look at
if
genes
you never stuck
and
stuck a fork in an outlet,
it only takes one.
So when you start to look at genes and heredity, they have shown in studies that if you show a baby a snake, it gets upset. So there's something in our genes that can detect danger.
Bad.
And that's what I mentioned about the DNA thing earlier. It's what is learned versus what's in the DNA, and we've got kids music again.
It's the creepiest thing.
I feel like I'm about to get shanked in the back by a jack in the box.
Yeah.
Like something behind me is making ominous music. Common sense says get up and run, but my idiot self is like, no, we got a podcast going on. I'll die here.
Don't you leave.
Hey, that'll be a great episode if I die on the air.
Well, I think it would be, I think it's interesting you bring up the DNA fact because you look at, from a human standpoint, but also like animals and stuff like that. Like there's so many things that happen in nature when a kid, like literally like egg cracks, thing walks out of it, and all of a sudden it already knows what
to do.
Yeah, the reptilian side.
Or a dog. Well, with dogs, a lot of us have, I'm assuming we've had dogs at some point in the past.
Yep.
Most people, or
Drew's
a cat
guy.
I love cats, but
I do too. Cats make the best egg rolls in target practice. I'll give you that.
Let's take cats for instance. So
either way, even like with these, or so, when a dog perks up, sometimes it's just somebody driving down the road, but sometimes they perk up and you go check outside. Why do we do that?
Yeah.
And then we go, stupid dog. No, like that dog sensed something. We don't know. Maybe that dog heard or saw something outside that we couldn't see.
Yeah.
Could have been someone on the property. Could have been. It was something that perked that dog up. And I would say that goes along the line with being in our DNA as whatever species.
Right. But, so two instances. So cats. Mother cats, whenever they have a litter, the first thing they do once the cats are able to start walking, if they're indoor cats, is they teach their babies how to use a litter box.
Yeah.
So it's a inherited thing that they teach them commonly or common sense how to use that litter box inside because they're not going to be able to go outside to be able to do any of that information. They're not going to have that.
That's what I'm going to call information. Anytime I take a crap now, I've got to go do some information.
Inherently, they don't have that, and they teach. The mother cat teaches that those babies how to bury everything. And
it's like we do with kids,
right? So there's that. But then Diesel, on the other hand, my dog, I have a 120-pound Mastiff Cane Corso, who. He's a baby. I mean, he is the biggest baby on the world. But the other day, we had a guy show up at the house unannounced. I live out in the country. No one shows up at my house unless they're unannounced. And you come to my house, you usually call them like, hey, I'm going to swing by, whatever. This guy shows up. He's a Kirby salesman. We're going to say that in air quotes. Hands me a bottle of Tide, but when he rings the doorbell, Diesel...
Isn't that the dude off the Nintendo games?
I think
it is.
I think so. But he shows... He rings the doorbell. Diesel goes apeshit. And the whole time that I'm trying to hold Diesel back, he's the friendliest dog in the world. I mean, Randy walks into my house.
He won't let me get out of the car. I open the car door and he tries to jump in my lap.
Yeah,
he's seriously the biggest puppy ever.
He's 10 years old, biggest puppy in the world. But I'm holding him back because Diesel's trying to get at this guy. I mean, he's not trying to get at him to hey, I want you to pet me. Trying to get at him I don't like that. I don't want this guy anywhere near me. And I'm holding him back hey, stop. Well, the whole time this guy's going through his spiel hey, here's this ball of Tide. I'd like to come in. I'd like to, do a spot in the house, blah, 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 blah.
Okay, if dude's holding back a 125-pound dog, I'm not saying I want to come inside.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's wearing ill-fitting clothes. It's the whole scenario of guy casing the house bullshit.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to keep him there so I can get my camera, so I can get him to look at the camera, so I can get a good picture of him, so I can send it to the sheriff and get license plates and everything else. And I'm like, nah, get the fuck out of here. I don't need you here. Go. And he's insistent on coming in the house. Finally, I just closed the door, and
no shit.
He's out. And Diesel's, the whole time, he's trying to get out of the house.
Yeah, Diesel knows.
Diesel knows there's something up. And I'm
weird for
going
him.
based on Diesel, no, this guy needs to go.
Yeah,
and
Diesel usually is very happy when people arrive.
Right. And when this whole process is going on, Liz drives down the driveway. So there's this whole thing going on with Diesel and Liz, she's showing up. I'm like, well, as you can see, my wife got home and you need to go, and we've got this thing going on. So there's a common sense thing going on with dogs that's built into them.
Instinct.
It's an instinct thing. Wow. It's something that they know there's something up.
Yep.
And like I said, he's the friendliest dog in the world until he doesn't think there's something right. So when it's built into the DNA, I think that we have the same thing. There's something that's built into us that, don't cross the street, don't touch the fire. But it only takes once. So you get hit by a car once, then it's going to have to happen once at least for us to know not to do that.
Yeah. I think it's to me where we're going with that, and I do believe there is something in the DNA, but I think that now brings up three separate categories, which is there's instinct. Right. There's DNA, there's instinct. I came out of the freaking womb and I've got this.
But does instinct go with DNA?
Yeah. I mean, I think it has to. Because instinct in itself, not learned responses. Right.
Right.
Because there's learned emotional responses. And we talk about this with the psychology of people that have been through violent encounters, domestic abuse situations, stuff like that. We might categorize that as this was a quote unquote, you're having an instinctual response to this, but it's not. It's still a learned response. I didn't come out of the womb afraid of a specific gender. I didn't come out of the womb afraid of people with beards. You go back to dogs in general, but my dog Bailey was beat as a puppy. Right, and then we rescued her.
Right.
And so as a rescue, she is she is just timid. And, anything that walks by the window, everything. That wasn't in her day one. That was learned, right? I come out of the womb, I'm 3 weeks old, and all of a sudden this guy is kicking me. All right, all of a sudden I hate guys. You know what I mean? So, but that's a learned response. So now you have instinct. You have both common sense and uncommon sense are learned responses, but the common sense, I believe at least where I'm going with this is just we all happen to just experience these in some form or fashion. These are part of life. So I come out of the womb, I instinctually breathe. I instinctually turn away from loud noises. All these type of things. We have instincts, but I think those are still different than common sense because even common sense is a learned response. It just happens to be learned because...
I think that's the sense part of common sense.
Yeah, it's the matter of we had to learn it. Right. At some point in time, somebody had to teach you how to cross the street and look both directions. At some point in time, somebody, either somebody told you or you figured out that fire is hot. You know what I mean?
So one thing it makes me think of is Andy Frisella.
Yes.
Right? So one thing I heard Andy Frisella say on his podcast is the secret to business is to learn not to get punched in the face the same way twice.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Like you try something and you get punched in the face. Like the common sense point or the point of being successful in business, you just don't do that twice.
Right.
Like you fail.
Watch it goes back to that's like the point of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
So maybe that's a little bit of common sense in a way that we could define it is someone who has common sense, like fails or gets punched in the face one way, they just don't do that again. You touch fire once and you're like, oh shit. Right, but the person that doesn't, and go that motherfucker just touched fire twice. Like, hang on, pump the brakes with this guy. Shit. Like he stuck his finger in that outlet again. The squad's there, and it's like, what's going on? Same shit.
I think I'm that representative in this group. Yeah. Like, but what if I tried it this way? Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, though. I think that when we break it down, I think if we look at the two words separately, common being prevalent. And, talking about obviously we know what sense is. Either you got it or you don't, whether it's learned or ingrained. I think that now, if you ask my definition, going back to the whole one I gave at the beginning with the whether or not to act on a pretty girl at a family reunion because you might be related. But I would say and after having Dr. Ohm here, it's actually really eye-opening. I think, like you said, that term is maybe something we should just try and get away from because it's too vague.
Yeah.
Really, because a lot of what we're talking about is obvious in your industry, or it's practical in your industry, or it's obvious to every infant, or obvious to every adult, but not every 5-year-old like my kid, or your 3-year-old or whatever. And I'm sure sometimes you post and Maverick does some really goofy stuff. Well, to us as adults, we're like, it's like me with my kid. I'm like, look at what this, what he did. He's an idiot.
That's why I posted those pictures from us hanging out last night, and I was like, these are the cute pictures. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Right. They were both still assholes at some point in the middle of the night. Yeah. And so I'm just, when they're being assholes, I'm usually not taking pictures.
You should start to do that. Do that for a week.
Kids are assholes.
Pictures when they're assholes.
Only put those up.
We don't put a lot of pictures of our kids up. I just put the stuff my kid says, which is ridiculous, but. Yeah, I think the term common sense doesn't really.
It's a trap.
It's a trap, and I think it's more of a filler. I think most people don't see it as a trap. I think most people just aren't intelligent enough or have the initiative to try and really articulate what they mean.
Yeah.
It's easier for me to go, well, that's common sense, than to go, okay, well, here's what I would have done and why.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking at you and you come in and say, holy crap, we tried to wire this and we blew it up, and you and Aaron are looking like a bunch of idiots, I'm going, that's common sense. That's a cop-out. That doesn't teach you guys anything. Yeah. It'd be better for me to take initiative and say, okay, guys, here's what you did wrong, and then you learn.
Yep.
So I think using the term common sense or telling somebody, well, you just don't have common sense. Yeah. And we see it in Facebook and the political rants.
I think it's really interesting you bring that point up, because I can sit there and I can look at you and say, well, yeah, that's common sense. Or the spin can be, you know what, I assumed you knew that. I was wrong. Right, and that takes you having the balls the guts to say that I was wrong, right? And then go, hey, you know what? The reason that I believe this is common sense is because through my experience, A, B, C, and D.
Well, and what you taught me, so when I told Aaron and Sean was working with me, I want to become a Krav instructor. I've been doing it for 6 years. I want to be an instructor. I've leveled up a little, and I would go learn from them. Well, when I go teach somebody that had no experience, hey, here's how you throw an elbow. They couldn't get it. Everybody does the push.
Yeah.
This is just one of the basic level 1 Krav stuff moves. Throw an elbow. And everybody does the push. And, hey, you ever put a car seat on, a seatbelt? Or you do like with the elbow to the back. Reach in the back of the fridge and pull that. It's just those little things that goes, okay, my bad. It's not common sense. I'm throwing air quotes now. It's not obvious to everybody this is how you throw an elbow. So I need to take the initiative to teach that.
Yeah.
For me, I could be like, dude, it's common sense. You throw an elbow this way. You don't push with your forearm. Here's how you throw a proper elbow. Here's how you get the most impact. That doesn't help anybody. So I think maybe it's a trap and it's a cop-out. It's a cop-out if you're the instructor. It's a trap if you're the one trying to sell a product or an idea to whether it's your wife or a business partner.
Yeah.
So I see it as kind of both ways.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It's very cool.
All right. Well, we've gone about $1:40, and I'm leaving for Virginia tomorrow, so I really need to get home.
What time you leaving?
I got to be on the road by 5 a.m.
That's lame.
Lame.
Before you even got the timeout, he knew what he was saying.
He did.
Common sense should have told you that he was going to have a smart
He could have said 9. I would have said that section.
Yeah.
Stupid. 2 p.m., idiot.
Yeah. Sucker.
I would have left at 3 p.m.
So let's kind of taper this down. First and foremost, this is a collab episode. Apparently,
it was a fun one.
Yeah, apparently three-way with all of them showing up.
Hey, it became 5 on Cinco de Mayo, baby.
Yeah, good point.
See? So let's do this real quick. Give a rundown. Where can everybody find the Buckhorn Podcast?
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Buckhorn Podcast.
There it is. See,
You can listen to us. I'll give the important part on Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. Usually he does this. I don't know.
Yeah.
I show up, I talk, I leave.
You can find us on all the major platforms.
Fair enough.
Buckhorn Podcast.
Well,
Podcast.
this episode became very, very quickly populated by 3 different kinds of bourbon. So remember, we had Wiggle from, or possibly Weigel. I apologize for wrecking your name.
I think Weigel.
Is it Weigel?
I think
I'm going to go with Weigel.
1G, I think, does that.
I'm going to say Weasley. Sounds fancier. It is from Pittsburgh. It's probably Weasley.
So we have Wiggle or Weigel. We apologize for slaughtering your name. Dr. Alm did bring the classic Woodford Reserve, which is always a good go-to. It's always a smooth, easy drink. And then, holy crap, man, that Virgil Cane
was really good.
Which our listeners know well.
Yeah, the
Martell,
double barrel whiskey, man.
That's one of the two he will not shut up.
It was a good spicy. It was spicy, but man, it was good spicy.
So for our
That's
episode,
delicious.
for the sake of our listeners, all 7 of them.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom. I want you 2 to rank each of these out of 5 donuts. How many do you give the Virgil Cane?
Out of 5 donuts. Honestly, the Virgil Cane. Now, hold on.
Now, 5 is your top tier. Like
Okay,
when you say
5's
5, we say
like-
5's your benchmark. Nothing can beat it.
All right, legit. I'm going to give Virgil Cane a 4. That was really, really good, really, really spicy, but I still, to this day, best bourbon I've ever had was the double Woodford, like the one you can only get in
I've
a
never
fifth.
had that.
Oh, man, it's so good. Yeah, you can lick some on your tongue if you want.
What, you have some here?
It's right there.
It's so good.
I'm gonna put that in my pocket.
But anyway, but that said, yeah. So I'll give the Virgil Cane a 4. Woodford's always a good 3 to 3.5. That's like a have it around the house all day, any day. And then the Weigel, I'll put it at like a 3 or a 3.5.
So I would have gone Virgil King 3.5, Woodford 3, Weigel 2.5.
Yeah.
I've already given my Virgil Cane. Everybody's heard that. Woodford. We haven't reviewed Woodford.
We haven't done a Woodford yet. Not Woodford straight.
I'll save that. Maybe we'll do one for that.
I'll go buy a
one.
bottle of Woodford, and we'll do that.
Martell and I will do the Wiggle Weigel.
The Wiggle Weigel, I'm going to give that a 2.5. It's a good 2.5 year or a 2 year. I like it.
I'm a 2.5. I think if it was aged more, it'd probably be a little better, but I say 2.5. We don't know the price point. Somebody gave it to us.
It was a gift from a buddy of mine from high school that I met up on Friday.
Not bad, though. I mean, for the right price, if it's $90, it's a 1.
Yeah.
We're going to assume it's an average price.
Price
say
matters.
2.5. Oh, in my reviews, it does.
Yeah, it's good.
It definitely does. I'm poor, man.
I've pretty much got 3 categories. This is trash. I would drink this if it was the right price, and damn, that was good. So, mine comes down to 3, don't
Mine always comes down to how much did that cost?
Yeah.
And isn't it available? So the Virgil Cane is not available in Ohio.
Yeah, you can't get it here.
It's good.
For all the Kamiwaza listeners, the Virgil Cane you cannot get here.
You cannot get
that was
it
on
here.
point, man.
Got to go to the Carolinas for that.
Carolinas,
but if you're ever in the Carolinas,
and this one is a limited run also, so it's not even available anymore.
Yeah.
Dang.
So you guys sitting on that not knowing, you'll probably never get that again unless Martell breaks this bottle.
Getting one last taste before.
I might have to just pour another splash. Be like, here, boop. Where is that?
Pull it up.
He just
Let's
grabbed
hear the open.
Why are you grabbing a bigger cup? What's that 24-ounce cup for?
All of a sudden, that bottle's gone.
Yeah, but the Virgil Cane, if you guys are ever in the Carolinas, all the Virgil Canes that Martell has so graciously bestowed upon me, all of them hit home. So check them out.
They're all really good. They're amazing.
South, north, where are they at? Where are they located?
They are located in South Carolina, in Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, they're in Charleston?
Yes.
Dang, we gotta see my buddy Buck. Yeah.
So when I'm down in Myrtle Beach in June, my plan is to pick up probably 4 or 5 bottles. They have a ginger infused.
You mean 8?
Whichever.
If anybody listening would like to get in on a bottle, I'm sure there's just a small premium.
Well,
Yeah, we have a new mule. We have a new mule to send down.
Like,
to
share,
the
and
Carolinas.
subscribe, and Martell will buy you a bottle.
Mo has already put in a request for a bottle. So from one more rep.
Well,
so
we're
he's
gonna need at
like,
least 3.
can you give me a bottle? I'm like, I owe you a bottle anyway,
There
so
you go.
I got you a bottle. But I'll probably pick up 4 or 5 bottles of ginger, just because the ginger makes it an amazing
Interesting
Manhattan or an old.
That's just the girl that works at the liquor store.
Yeah, she's. But they have a
ginger. I need
ginger. I need 4 bottles. But I've got a buddy of mine who lives in Simpsonville who has 2 bottles. He's got a bottle of Roundhouse and a bottle of Electric Owl, which is another a limited release that's not available
We'll
anymore.
have to have you guys down for one of ours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Drink all of Martell's bourbon.
Yeah.
So it's I've got a couple more bottles to pick up when I'm down there on my way through Simpsonville, and then I'm going to pick up a couple more bottles while I'm down there.
Well, let me know when you go because I'm definitely going to put an order in.
Cool. Yeah, I'll let you know.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, you guys know the drill. Please like, subscribe, check us out. We are all over the place: Spotify, iTunes, Google, Stitcher, Podbean, all that kind of fun stuff. Leave a review, leave some comments, man. If you really enjoyed this, let us know what you thought. What are your thoughts on Common Sense, how that goes through? Definitely head over, check out the guys from Buckhorn Podcast. I'm sure down the road we'll do another kind of collaboration on those. And otherwise, be good, be awesome, and have a great week.
See you guys.
See you guys. Pinkies up.
Delayed reaction from
none of us knew who was going to go first. We were trying to be courteous to the guys who were visiting. That was on you, Drew.
Yeah, it was.
Common sense says you should have taken the lead.
And there you have it. See you guys next week.
See ya.
See ya.